find it in time.
Right. Greetings to everyone in our watching or in listening audience. Welcome to Real Talk, the Invincible Truth to Enlighten the Masses. We welcome you and we thank you for joining us today with a very, very important topic that is within our community, within our families that needs to be addressed, dealing with Black mental health. And we have a very power-packed panel today, coming from different perspectives in terms of how to address this issue of Black mental health. So what we're going to go ahead and do on the outstart is open up with a short prayer, and then we'll go right into the program. Thank you. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, O Allah, we seek thy refuge from anxiety and grief. We seek thy refuge from lack of strength and laziness. We seek thy refuge from cowardice and niggardliness. We seek thy refuge from being overpowered by debt and the oppression of men. O Allah, suffice us with that which is lawful, keep away from us that which is prohibited. And with thy grace, make us free of want of that which is besides thee. Amen. Greetings, everyone. Once again, it's an honor and privilege to come before you all. My name is Brother DeAndre Muhammad, and we would like to welcome you once again to Real Talk, the Invincible Truth to Enlighten the Masses, dealing with today, once again, Black mental health. And we'd like to start off on the outstart to introduce our Power Pack panelists and to share information to you all that's very pertinent and important to our community. First, we'd like to introduce our brother and our sister, who is originally from New York, by way of now Bennettsville, South Carolina, who are certified auditors in mental health therapy of Dianetics. We have our brother and sister, Brother Joseph, and Sister Lydia Muhammad. Next, we have our brother Jarrett Washington, who is working out of Atlanta, Georgia at this time. He has his license, professional counseling, as well as he received his Master's of Art in Clinical Mental Health Counseling from Augusta University. And he also received a Bachelor of Arts from Ramapo College of New Jersey in psychology. And we welcome our brother Jared. Also, we have his wife, Sister Essence Washington, who has spent the last 9 years dedicating her work to educating, advocating, and providing therapeutic interventions with the mental health field. She received her Bachelor's of Science in Psychology from Valdosta State University and Master's in Social Work from Clark Atlanta University, along with providing therapy services for local private universities. She owns a private practice, Her Healing, in Atlanta, Georgia, and she specializes in maternal health services. Most of her experience is in crisis intervention, case management, group therapy, and clinical assessments in a behavioral health setting. She has a passion for maternal mental health, women issues, relationship concerns, work-life balance, and professional development. So we welcome our Sister Essence. And also, last but not least, we have our sister, Nafisa, who is the daughter of our brother, who is the chief engineer of Real Talk. We have our sister Nafisa, the daughter of Brother Benjamin and Sister Renee. And she is originally from New Jersey. She is currently a graduate student working towards her master's degrees in clinical mental health counseling through Johns Hopkins University, pardon me. She became adamant in the field, to approach the field of mental health due to the diagnosis of her brother who struggles and receive appropriate care. In working with Black communities, she is very passionate about that, and she is driven to erase the stigma surrounding mental health. She began to get involved volunteering and fundraising for the Mental Health Association of New Jersey, pardon me, and went on to graduate from King University with a bachelor's in psychology. After moving to Baltimore, she continued her studies and she met with Dr. Sabrina N. Nadaye and began learning mind-body skills to help individuals process trauma and begin their journey of healing. After going through advanced training, Nafisa began to further develop her counseling skills working under the supervision of Dr. Sabrina. Since then, she has co-facilitated 2 mind-body skills groups of African-American women called Black Blossoms, and has even gone on to create another mind-body skill group, Melanin Minds, centered around mental health in the Black community. Nafisa is deeply humbled by the opportunity to work with men and women of all ages. She's empathetic, passionate, and dedicated to her work. Nafisa believes that the journey to healing is a process that helps unearth our potential and further develops the gift within to be a better version of our true self. So we say, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the powerful, dynamic panel that we have. So on the outstart, brothers and sisters, we'd like to provide each of our panelists the opportunity to give an introduction about themselves. And then after that, then we'll go right into the topic at hand. So we'll like to start off with our brother and sister, Brother Joseph and Sister Lydia Muhammad.
Well, greetings, fellow panelists and also fellow viewers. I'd like to start off with the greetings in the name of Allah, the Blessed, the Merciful. I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Messenger, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the divine leader, teacher, guide, warner, and Messiah in our midst. I'd like to thank them all, and I'd like to thank the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for having guided us to the study of Dianetics, the study of the mind, and how we as Black people can indeed alleviate some of the problems that has been caused by our sojourn in the hells of North America and throughout the world. I'd like to greet all the viewers with the greeting words of peace. We say in the Arabic language, Assalamu alaikum. To those who may not be aware, that this simply means peace be unto you. Now, Dianetics. What is Dianetics? And what is in Dianetics that will be of help for me and those around me having undergone the trauma that we have in America and our sojourn? Well, Dianetics. The word is from the Greek, dia, through, and soul, which means it's a study of the mind and the soul and its effects and its correlation. Now, it would be impossible to give a fullest understanding of Dianetics, but what we can do in the short period of time allotted, we might be able to give you a better understanding by way of the following video that we have. And then we'll go into discussion, and if you have any questions, we'll follow up through there. And, Brother Benjamin, if you're ready, we'd like to show that video.
Well, Brother Joseph, before we go into the actual presentations, we're just going to have each of the panelists do a brief introduction, and then we'll go into the presentations.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Sister Lydia.
Oh, assalamu alaikum. My name is Sister Lydia Muhammad, and I would just like to be able to share. I do have experience in the mental health field. I have a master's degree, and my thesis was in mental wellness. I had an opportunity to do the mental illness portion of it, but I believe at that time it was enough mental illness going around. So I decided to go into the mental wellness part of it and spread that knowledge all over through my family. Dianetics has gone a long way with myself and those who are around me, because we know that just knowing that little bit of, if you connect Dianetics and mental health together, you can go a long way with that. But I also have experience working with families through the Head Start program. I collaborated with many community leaders, starting different organizations around mental health. In the church, we have, how would I say it, relationship and collaboration with different pastors and ministers. And we're very proud that we are with the Nation of Islam and how much we love our Allah. We love the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and we love the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for giving this grand opportunity for us. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Thank you very much. And we'll go to our brother Jarrett Washington.
Good afternoon, everybody. Like was stated, I'm Jarrett Washington. I have in clinical mental health counseling, and I've been a therapist for about 5 years now. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I've worked in various clinical settings of psychiatric hospitals, county jails, and foster care agencies, insurance companies, and things of that such. I love therapy. I love working with people of color. I love assisting in the healing process for our community. I think that's my purpose, as well as my passion, and that's what I was put here to do. And that's just me in a nutshell. So thank you.
Thank you, Brother Jarrett. Honored to have you. We have his wife, our sister, Sister Essence Washington.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Essence Washington, and like Brother DeAndre said, I have a master's in social work, and I have a license as licensed clinical and social work, in which I did my specialty in clinical mental health, and I specialize in maternal health services. That's something that came to me after I had my daughters, really realizing a lot of the mental health stressors that women go through childbirth. And even after childbirth, and just learning to work through life and balancing the many roles that we have. So I am happy to be here. I realize that women of color in particular have a lack of access to these services and a lack of knowledge about these services. So I love providing any kind of education, therapeutic services, so that everyone can be reached and provided the things that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Essence. And we have our sister, Sister Nafisa Muhammad.
Everyone, like Brother DeAndre stated, I am Sister Nafisa Muhammad, daughter of Brother Benjamin and Sister Renee. I did study psychology in undergrad, and it wasn't until I graduated, well, actually really before I graduated, that I really started to get involved just volunteering with the Mental Health Association of New Jersey. Just watching my brother go through his struggles and even discussing it with friends, I saw that there was definitely a stigma. We know that mental health can be a taboo in the Black community. And there were people who were struggling and they weren't really sure what to do. And being in that kind of experience, I decided to go on to get my master's in clinical mental health counseling. Hopefully, inshallah, this will be my last semester, and my plan is to go on and apply for my license so that I can also be a licensed professional counselor. A lot of the work that I do is for free. I offer groups that I run for free, specifically for Black people. So it's definitely something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm looking forward to discussing more with you all. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. It's our honor to have you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So you can see the wealth of experience and information that's going to be provided today in this timely, and as Sister Nafisa said, taboo subject, but definitely it's something that we have to get into and delve into it, not only just for information purposes, but for the purpose of providing meaningful and substantive solutions so that we can resolve these issues within our homes, within our community, and within our nation in general. So we know that we have some questions already in the Q&A box. We'll definitely have a question and answer period right after the presentations to entertain questions at hand. So everyone, if you could please be patient with us, we'll get to that question and answer period right after the presentation from each of the panelists. So we're going to go ahead and start off with Brother Joseph and Sister Lydia, who will start us off with their presentation. So we'll go to our brother and sister now.
Okay, yes, sir. Once again, Dianetics, study of the mind. What we'll be talking about today will be taken from the book from L. Ron Hubbard titled Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health. Modern Science of Mental Health. Dianetics is actually not only a subject in and of itself, science in and of itself, but it's a compilation of the studies that have gone on before and on to now. We have seen throughout history there have been attempts to deal with man's mental health, his emotional well-being, and so Dianetics, while it is the modern science of mental health, it is not the first time the man has undertaken this tremendous attempt to study himself and to really get a handle on what causes our behavior and how it can be adjusted. So without further ado, if our brother Benjamin is ready, we would like to go to the video and see if we can break down some of these studies, these study points that will help us to understand better Dianetics.
Yes, and as we do that, the mic, Brother Joseph and Sister Lydia, is a little distorted. Still, so we can work on resolving that. Please feel free so we can hear everyone clearly. But the mic is kind of coming in.
Have you ever noticed that people react to the same source of danger in different ways?
Turn around! Get the money right now! Listen, don't do anything stupid, okay? Money, right now. Money, right now. Right now! Get out! Get out! Go home! Go home!
You might be surprised to learn that all the seemingly different ways we handle these contra-survival problems really fall into just 5 courses of action.
Turn around!
In other words, there are 5 ways that we can react to any source of danger, pain, or punishment. For the sake of illustration, let's imagine that one night you're sitting in your living room and you decide to go upstairs to bed. But you discover, to your surprise, that a particularly angry black panther is sitting on the stairs. Now, this panther is definitely a source of danger to you, and he's giving you a problem because you have to get past him to go to bed. There are 5 ways of handling this situation. 5 things you can do about this panther. 1. You could attack the panther. 2. You could run out of the house and flee the panther. 3. You could avoid the panther by going outside and climbing up the porch lattice. 4. You could neglect the panther. In other words, just refuse to admit that it is a black panther and attempt to go up the stairs anyway. Or 5. You could succumb to the panther and hope that he eats you quietly and without too much pain. These are the 5 courses of action you can take: attack, flee, avoid, neglect, or succumb. In Dianetics, These have become known as the Black Panther mechanisms. They're the 5 different reactions you can have to any source of danger, pain, or any contra-survival problem. And they're also the 5 ways your reactive mind handles engrams.
Jessica, what are you doing? I was just coloring. You haven't done any of your homework?
Let's take an example of a child whose mother punishes her by beating her with a hairbrush every time she's supposedly been bad.
I want to come in here and see you color.
Physical punishments contain pain and are therefore engrams.
We don't have time for
To this girl's reactive mind, her mother is now considered a source of pain or danger.
Do your homework right now, and don't make me come back in here again.
The reactive mind reacts to punishment sources in one of those 5 ways, and there's no telling which one it will choose. If she is punished and thereafter obeys, she's actually succumbed. She's sunk into apathy. She could flee the punishment source or try to avoid her, which might be considered cowardly. Or she could neglect the matter and simply ignore her mother.
I'm very upset by this because
Are we having issues with the video? If you could please unmute yourself.
Playing the video now.
But it's okay. It's fitting later on.
Is there any way for us to deal with the audio problem with Brother Joseph and Sister Lydia? It's still coming. It's like it got worse.
Yes, sir. Do is it will off.
We're working out.
And I know that we're working on it. If the next person, if you can bring a lot off and maybe come back on and get work again. But DeAndre?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know someone who has never fully recovered from a serious loss in life? Or a traumatic experience?
Don't you ever talk.
And in your own day-to-day life, do you sometimes experience self-doubts, negative thoughts, unreasonable fears, upsets, or irrational behavior? The painful experiences of our past clearly have an effect upon our present behavior. But to what degree and why? What causes the mind to depart from rational thought or behavior?
It's over!
That is the subject of Dianetics. Every moment of your life, your mind is recording everything that's happening to you. Every sight, every sound, every taste, smell, pain, emotion, touch, everything. These recordings form what is called the time track, a consecutive record of all the experiences accumulated throughout your existence. Your mind uses this information to make decisions and solve problems relating to your survival. The better its decisions, the better you survive. Most of this data is stored in your analytical mind, that part of your mind that thinks, remembers, and calculates. But some of your experiences are not recorded into those analytical memory banks. It is a discovery of Dianetics that all of your painful experiences are stored in a previously unknown part of the mind. It's called the reactive mind, and it throws those experiences back at you in an irrational attempt to get you to avoid the same painful thing from happening to you again. Here's a simple and common example. At some point, you've probably gotten sick from eating tainted food. Later in life, if you see or smell or possibly even think about that particular food again, you start to feel a little nauseous. Now, you know that logically, the mere sight or smell or thought of a food can't physically make your body ill because you haven't actually eaten it again, and yet you're experiencing the same sick feeling you had before. This is your reactive mind, making you re-experience the same perceptions it recorded in that earlier incident, in a crude attempt to protect you from what it believes is a dangerous situation. It reacts solely on a stimulus-response basis and below your awareness. The painful experiences hidden in your reactive mind are the cause of your fears, insecurities, negative thoughts, unwanted emotions, and irrational behavior. You have been accumulating these deeply buried experiences throughout your existence. In fact, the most damaging among them occurred before you were born. What would life be like if all of the pain you've experienced no longer affected your abilities, emotions, and behavior? You would think and behave rationally, making the best possible decisions relating to your survival. You would be able to utilize your imagination and creativity to their fullest. You would be confident, more intelligent, and productive, and happier. You would be yourself, free to enjoy life and reach your full potential. In short, your mind would be clear. That is the goal of Dianetics. People achieve this state every day, and so can you.
Assalamu alaikum. Are you able to hear me?
Alaikum salam. Yes, sir.
Okay, brother. Sorry about the problems with the video. So, Dianetics, what we've learned now is we have some engrams. So, going over those terms again, engrams, they are pictures, moments in our history that when we are undergoing pain or painful emotion, there is a period of conscious decline where the reactive mind will take over, where the analytical mind, which you're using right now, has been dulled or put to sleep very briefly. So in this time or period when the reactive mind takes over, we can act out in such a way that is, contrary to what our normal characteristics would be. Very simply, we have people will act out, they will snap. Other terms we've used, in recent times, he's bugging out, he's tripping. These are kind of terms we've used to show that we're acting out of our normal character. And we don't always know that we're doing that or what causes that. These are re-stimulations of events that have happened to us in the past. Okay, well, how can we get a handle on that? How can we erase that that automatic snap or turn on that causes us to act out? We say in the Nation of Islam, as it is said and also in Dianetics, this is not you. This is what happened to you. And because of that, it has already been proven by modern genetics and scientific study that the Black man and woman, appropriate to this discussion tonight, we have trauma going all the way back to slavery that we no longer can remember, but we also have it written even at the cellular level that causes us under re-stimulation to act out. But we're not unable to deal with that today. We are able to deal with that. And Dianetics, what we call auditing session, allows us to take the person back to the moment in time where some of these engrams first started and we can erase them. We can cause a person to relive them, not remember, but relive them. And thereby we can erase the effects. We can take the charge and emotion of that time out and bring a person back to that state of clear, where he is no longer controlled or influenced by the things in his past, a negative experience of pain and moments of painful emotions that will cause us to act out in present time. Now, that's just a very brief overview of Dianetics. And while it takes a lot of skill, it takes a lot of time of study to be able to actually use this, what we call a tool, in our ability to help ourselves clear. There are other subjects or parts of Dianetics that we can use, other tools that don't take a long time. Limited time you can learn in the comfort of your own home and under your own time to be able to rid yourself or to deal with it. Some of these engrams and take the charge and the emotional stress out of that. And we'll be going into that a little later on in the program, hopefully. And that's pretty much it for me for the introduction to Dianetics. Any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer later on in the program. Brother DeAndre.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very, very, very helpful information. And of course, when you speak about it, we'll be talking about that later on in reference to the techniques that can be utilized in the homes, being that we were dealing with COVID-19 and a lot of people are still, even though everything is opened up, still kind of sheltered in place. That would be very beneficial in terms of what people can do, in-house as we deal with the pandemic. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll go now to Brother Jarrett, and we'll hear from our Sister Essence, basically dealing with some of the main contributing factors to Black mental health. And in your field, how do you address this issue in terms of from an information standpoint and solution-based standpoint? Well, Brother Jarrett, the floor is open for you.
All right. Well, thank you again for having me. Thank you for giving me this platform to talk about Black mental health, right? So I have a couple points that I wanted to hit, that I want to touch on as it relates to Black mental health, right? In terms of the question you asked, I'm definitely going to address that in the points that I have. And so first I wanted to bring up is when we talk about Black mental health, one of the things in the mental health world or in the mental health community is that we always bring up how people are resistant to mental health, right? And so, but we don't ever talk about why, or the majority of people who say this don't talk about why. Why is it that Black people are resistant to mental health? And so in order to break the stigma of mental health in the Black community, in order to solve that issue, right, we have to talk about why. And so the why, right, there's a mistrust of institutions, right? Mistrust of institutions. So there's a mistrust of, where is my information going? I don't know this person, and I'm telling them all about myself. I'm telling them all about my family and things of that nature. I don't know what is to come of that, right? And if we look at the history of this country, Black people have a right to be not to trust these institutions, whether that's the medical field, the mental health field, all of that stuff. We have that right. When you think about situations or not even situations, when you think about certain times of history, like the Tuskegee, where they literally were experimenting on Black and brown bodies, leads to the distrust or the mistrust of institutions. Also, I kind of touched on this, but the fear of the lack of confidentiality. Again, where is my information going to? I'm telling you some deepest and darkest secrets. I'm telling you things that I've probably never told anybody before. Where is this information going? Who are you going to give this information to? And what are you going to do with that information? Another thing, and I do, and before I touch on this point, there's one part. I do understand the platform that I'm on, so I'm going to be very specific in my language when I state this next point. But believing that religion is the only solution, right? Religion is a part of the solution, but there are other solutions that can be coupled with religion, right? Or spirituality, right? We don't only have to pray about it, but we can put in the work as well. We can work with therapists as we pray. We can work with life coaches as we pray. We can work with that medical professional as we pray, but that resistance is also still a part, can come from that belief that if I just pray or I just utilize my faith, then I'll be okay. And I think that that's also a contributing factor to that resistance. And lastly, in terms of that resistance is the fear of being vulnerable, right? Especially for us Black men, we're not comfortable with being vulnerable. We don't know where that vulnerability may lead us. We don't like it. Being vulnerable may be a sign of weakness. And we may not even be in a space where we can be vulnerable with ourselves. And you mean to tell me that I have to be vulnerable an outside person, right? And so that can contribute to the distance, keeping things in the family. Things in the family stay in the family. Another factor into that resistance, right? And so I wanted to talk about the why. I wanted to talk about the why Black people may be resistant to mental health. Of the institution. That's extremely important. And that brings me to my next point, right? So again, as I stated earlier, I am a mental health counselor, a mental health therapist rather, and I specialize, which I didn't state earlier, is that I specialize in intergenerational trauma. Brother Joseph mentioned how, we suffer at not only from the mental health standpoint, but even at the cellular standpoint, we still carry on trauma from slavery, right? And so with intergenerational trauma, what that concept is it's that it talks about how trauma responses are passed down through different generations within a family or a community. I focus primarily on how the historical traumatic event of chattel slavery created trauma responses that are being passed down through different generations in the Black community. And we're suffering from this, right? And the thing is that some of those trauma responses that we continue to experience and pass down is being reinforced by recent or contemporary or modern day racial traumatic events. Now, when I say racial traumatic events, I'm talking about situations or incidences like the murder of George Floyd. I'm talking about the murder of Breonna Taylor, right? I'm talking about even, I'm talking about just look at the climate of our country, right? And I won't go into that too much, but look at the history of this country. There was never a point in time, slavery did not end, and then there was a point in time or a point in history where they said, or where a space was created for Black people to truly heal. Actually happened was more trauma on to the layer of trauma that we experienced for 400 plus years. And when we talk about the historical traumatic event of chattel slavery, we're talking about day in and day out of brutality every day of their lives, and end in 1865 with no space to heal. But again, for trauma. And we pass those trauma responses down since then. And we label it sometimes as culture. Sometimes we don't even recognize that we're passing it down. Sometimes we don't even recognize that it's a trauma response, right? Why is it that Black people get nervous when they see red and blue lights? Why is it that Black people, right? Or why is it that we spank our children, right? Or use that as a form of discipline, rather? Where do we get that from, right? So I wanted to touch on that. And again, I wanted to touch on the intergenerational trauma because I think that as a community, we're suffering, we're struggling with that. And so I believe in true healing. I believe in order for us to fully heal, we have to be able to identify this. We have to be able to identify this and so that we can move forward. And I don't want to say begin our journey of healing, push our journey of healing further, understanding what parts of our community, what parts of some of the characteristics or some of the behaviors in our community, what parts of that is contributed directly to slavery. You know what I'm saying? And so that leads me to my last point, right? Because we can talk about what's the problem all day. Also, what we need to do is offer true and valuable solutions, right? And so, again, intergenerational trauma, that's what we struggle with. And when we talk about intergenerational trauma, which I didn't mention, which I should, is that it's passed down through generations, but how is it passed down? It's passed down through storytelling, right? What our grandparents tell stories that we're telling, that our parents told us, that we're telling our children, that's going to tell their children. Also, by learned behaviors, what we see, what we experience. And it's also passed down by our epigenetics, the cellular level, DNA. It's literally passed down through our DNA. African Americans, Black people, communities, we're operating off of a survivor mode. We're literally operating off of survivor mode. We're not just being, we're not just living. We're trying to survive, right? And so again, the next step, or the next point I want to make, the last point I want to make, is that healing process, right? So we heal from this. Again, we identify what it is. We interview our parents, if they're still here to interview. We interview our elders in our family. Ask about their experiences, right? Ask about their experiences. See where the trauma resides, if you can, right? And see how some of those behaviors may have been passed down to you. And see how, if some of those behaviors that were passed down to you, that you may have passed down to your children, okay? And we want to also engage in activism. That's extremely important. We want to engage in some type of way. I'm not saying that everybody has to go out on the streets and be on the front lines and protest, but we want to engage in some type of activism, because that will help us heal, not only fight, but heal from the trauma that we experience. Not only that the trauma that's being passed down, but I talked about racial trauma as well, but it helps us heal from the trauma that we experience on a day-to-day basis, because being Black in America is traumatic. So we want to engage in activism. We want to join support groups, join groups with like-minded individuals, join support groups where you're having these type of discussions, where you can lean on each other, where you can support each other. You can support each other's storytelling and talking about ways that we can get through it. Also, therapy. I wouldn't be a therapist if I didn't say therapy is a way that we can get through this. But not just therapy from anyone. Therapy from people that look like us, or therapy from people who are culturally competent, who knows and understands and can be empathic or empathetic to the Black experience in America. Also, again, as I said, connecting the dots in your family. There's genograms. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of a genogram, but those is literally like a map where you can different, the different relatives in your family and different experiences within your family. So genograms is another way, so you can visually see the makeup of your family and the makeup of where that trauma may reside and how it's being passed down. And also the last point that I want to make under healing is after we incorporate all of that, after we're able to identify, after we're able to become aware, and after we're able to interview family members and connect the dots, and we're going to therapy and we're doing the work, we want to be intentional about breaking the cycle of trauma so that we can start promoting a culture of healing, right? Promoting a culture and a cycle of healing, right? Where we're passing that healing down rather than the trauma. So that's what I have for you all today. That's a very brief introduction to what intergenerational trauma is and how it's connected to historical trauma and how it's reinforced daily by racial traumatic events. So I thank you all for listening to me, and I thank you for giving me this platform to speak about this.
So thank you so much, Brother Jad. Well, a wealth of information. Appreciate it. And before we go to Sister Essence, we do have questions that's coming in the Q&A slot. So of course, as everyone is listening to our presenters, if you have any questions that develop in your mind as they're speaking, please feel free to put the question in the Q&A, not the chat box, but the Q&A box, so it can be addressed by our panelists in the appropriate time. Thank you. Sister Essence.
Greetings. I laugh. I'm smiling and laughing because I always tell my husband I hate following up after him because he always does such a great job on all of his presentations. But again, I specialize in maternal health services and women's issues. And so just to break down a little bit what maternal health services is, we're discussing the perinatal, which is women who are currently pregnant or trying to get pregnant, and postpartum period, so after birth. And then when we discuss women's issues, we think about our normal mental health experiences that we have. So depression, anxiety, psychosis, trauma, a lot of the normal things that you hear when you hear the word mental health. So a lot of these things, while it may sound like the normal overall things that we experience, some of the things are particular to women in particular because of the maternal piece. So trying to give birth. So a lot of women experience fertility issues, and that covers that area as well. And so I want to give you all just a couple of statistics when we think about things, especially because Brother Jared mentioned a few of these things. Black people are twice as more likely to experience sadness, to experience psychotraumatic stress of some sort. A lot of it has to do with, of course, a lot of things that he was saying, racism, a lot of the experiences that we have in this world currently and that we've experienced before. And what I've noticed working with the Black people in particular is that we have a lack of access to these services and a lack of knowledge about these services. And so when I say a lack of knowledge, oftentimes when we hear depression in the Black community, we hear pray about it, we hear get over it, we hear move on. And so oftentimes it's hard for us to feel comfortable enough to express, this is exactly what I'm feeling. And as it relates to mothers in particular, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die during childbirth in comparison to white women, in comparison to Asians, multiple other races. And we're twice as more likely to experience some type of trauma during childbirth. So when you think about that, you think 3 to 4 times more likely to die during childbirth, but then those women outside of that do not pass away, they're experiencing some type of trauma. And oftentimes that trauma is connected to the belief that the medical system has about Black women in particular. So Oftentimes you've heard there's multiple articles out there about Black doctors who believe that Black women have a higher tolerance of pain in comparison to our white counterparts. Um, and when I say this, maternal health, men can experience these things as well. And so when we talk about postpartum depression, men can experience postpartum depression as well, because they're there in that experience, and they're there when they see things happening to these women as they're giving birth. And so it's not just for women, but there is postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum psychosis. And so when we think about some of these things, psychosis in particular is very rare, but women can oftentimes start to hear voices, start to see things. And so when we give birth, and just to give you kind of like a little scientific approach on that, our hormones are up here when we're carrying our babies. And so when we hit that birthing process, once the baby is delivered, our hormones literally drop from here to here. And it's a drastic decrease in that moment of time after birth. And so that's why a lot of women, typically you've heard of baby blues for a lot of women. So that first 1 to 2 weeks after birth, that experience of sadness is there. And that's just because the hormones drop. And so when we start to think about actual postpartum depression, a lot of that is extended past these 2 weeks. So it's normal for women and normal for men to experience some type of sadness, some type of change in mood those first couple of weeks after birth. But when it starts to extend past those few weeks, that's when it becomes a concern for a lot of people. And so I want to give you all just kind of like some normal facts that you'll see. Like if you start to see a woman or man not want to be attached to their spouse or their children, that's a huge factor. Not connecting with the baby, not connecting with other people, that's a big factor. Shame and guilt as it relates to birth is a big thing. And I want to say one thing about some of these things that I'm mentioning, a lot of times is that we're not having these discussions. So we don't necessarily know that other people have experienced these same things, and we feel ashamed about experiencing these things. And just a historical point on this, Black women are referred to as mammies historically, right? And so when you think about it, we were the mother to everyone. An expectation to be that superwoman that we hear a lot about from Black women. And so when you give birth, the expectation is that I'm a superwoman, that I'm going to be able to do anything and everything, and I should be capable of handling it. And so when you find yourself in a position to which you can't handle it, then the question is, what am I doing wrong? Is there something wrong with me? And a lot of times as Black people, Brother Jared mentioned this, we have a hard time being vulnerable. And so we're afraid to tell somebody else something doesn't feel right. Or I don't necessarily have that connection with my baby, what's wrong with me? And so, and even with men, like I said, a lot of men, sometimes they don't necessarily understand that not having a connection with their child may be concerns for them mental health wise, and not being able to actually, see or hear some of the concerning things that their wife or their spouse may be experiencing. And so just a couple of things, looking out for physical symptoms too, fatigue, tiredness, headaches. Our body tells us when something is wrong with us mentally as well. Stomach aches is a huge thing for a lot of people. But I do want to get into the treatment approaches. And I know that was kind of a question that somebody had already asked too, but I do come from a CBT approach, so cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as strength-based. And I did mention earlier that I got my master's from Clark Atlanta, which I really appreciate because they had the Afrocentric perspective. And that comes from the idea that we are all one, which can be difficult when we think about it from an American perspective, because there's a lot of, as professionals, we have a lot of ethics. So when we think about ethics, it's hard for us to, we can't counsel people that we know personally. But when you think about the Afrocentric perspective, it comes from the idea of you are my brother, you are my sister, and therefore I can understand your circumstances and your situation. And so it's always a benefit when I think about it, when I'm serving Black people in particular, because there's a connection that we have regardless of anything else. If I have a completely different life from you, I know one thing, we share these Black experiences. And so I'm able to understand your situation just a little bit more than someone else would. And I understand not having access to these services, not being able to afford therapy, not being able to have family members that are understanding of your needs as it relates to therapy, because that's one big thing in the Black community. There's a huge difference when we think about our older, and when I say older, I mean like, you know, way, way before time in comparison to now, where they don't know what mental health is at all. So when you say it, they're like, nothing's wrong with you, or it's not that big of a deal. And so being able to be in spaces where you feel like another Black person can understand, this is what I'm going through. And they understand when you say, I'm feeling depressed, that it's not just you're feeling sad, or you're having a tantrum, or you're just upset because you're not getting your way, type of thing. So therapy is like the key thing when we think about treatment, because of course I'm a therapist, but when we think about outside of just going to therapy, having a proper spiritual foundation is a big thing. And I incorporate that in my therapy as well for a lot of people, because your spirituality is your grounding factor. Oftentimes it connects you to feeling like you have some type of sense of purpose. And when you have a sense of purpose, you always find a way to draw back to that. You know, when you're always operating in your purpose, that brings you happiness. Everything else in the world might be chaotic, but when you're operating in your purpose, that brings that sense of joy, like you're achieving something and obtaining something. And you often find that in your spirituality as well. And so I always make it a point, if a person has a certain spiritual background, we're going to bring it back to that as well, because it's important that you continue to connect that with your mental health too. Even when when we say pray about it, you're praying about that. When you think about praying, you're praying about the things that I'm dealing with from a mental health perspective, and hoping that I have the right doctors, I have the right therapists, I have the right people surrounding me that is going to support me through this process. Of course, medication, some people do have to get to that point. And it's not always an ongoing life experience. Sometimes people need it just to stabilize themselves for the moment, just to be able to get to the point where they can actually participate in therapy, or participate and understand what other people are trying to do to help them. The other thing is having a self-care routine. And what I mean by that is being able to have something that you can look forward to. And I know some people, they don't like to be, I wake up at 8 o'clock and do the same thing every single day, but that's beneficial for a lot of people to know that you have something that you're looking forward to. And so getting up in the morning and making sure you're saying your prayers, having that individual time to just reflect on what happened yesterday and what you're going to do differently today. Those are all things that you could consider your self-care. Those are the things that you need. Brushing your teeth is self-care. That's maintenance. And being able to have something that you can stick to that, again, keeps you grounded in your reality and helps you to feel like there's a sense of something that you're accomplishing each day. And the biggest thing for Black people in particular is talking about it. And what I mean by talking about it to your peers. And of course, you're not going to tell your peers all of your problems, all of your mental health issues. But a lot of times we feel alone. We feel like we're the only people experiencing this. Not a lot of people are talking about it. And so when you're able to at least just even communicate about certain things, you're able to see, I'm not the only person experiencing this. And that takes away some of that shame I was talking about earlier, and that guilt that you experience, because you feel like I'm not the only person. And I can find comfort in at least knowing that there are other people that can relate and even provide you different approaches and different things that they've done that might have helped them. And so thinking about that. And then the last thing is coping skills. And I know that's a very common word that we hear, but coping skills can be as small as music, but coping skills can be exercise. I think everybody has different things, and it's really about what makes you feel good, what brings your spirit up, what makes you feel joy, even if it's for that little period of time. And that little period of time is key for people who may be experiencing suicidal thoughts. If you can get somebody to the point where they can feel good for at least that hour and distract them from that mind frame, you can get them the help that they need. And so that's a huge thing. And, you know, I think somebody mentioned it earlier, but support groups, you know, finding things that are key to your particular thing. So I talked about maternal health. So there's, you know, first time moms groups, that's what's very helpful. Black moms group in particular, that's very helpful. And you have that. uh, but it's helpful for you. And so, yeah. Okay, give me 1 second, baby. Okay. Sorry about that, but that's all I really wanted to say. I was wrapping it up anyway, but that was some treatment approaches, and again, just connecting yourself to a therapist could be the most beneficial thing for a lot of people, and they can connect you to multiple other things that are helpful for you as well. But I appreciate the time that I've been given here, and I look forward to any questions answered later on.
Thank you so much, Sister Essence, as well, for giving us that information, especially that maternal aspect, and particularly how Black women, historically have been that figure, like the mother of all. You're absolutely right. And to this day, it's that same. We still have that within our communities. So greatly appreciate that, and the therapeutic, standpoints that y'all are given as you provide the information. So thank you so much, Sister Nafisa. If you can unmute yourself, sister.
Sorry.
I see.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Again, my name is Sister Nafisa, and I first want to just thank everyone for tuning in. I want to thank the staff, the behind the scenes tech people, and Brother DeAndre for having us all here. I want to also thank the panelists because I've learned a lot as well. Again, my name is Sister Nafisa, and I am currently in my last semester of my master's program at Johns Hopkins University, studying clinical mental health. In that program, when we complete a certain level of courses, we're allowed to go out into our practicum and intern sites, practicum and intern sites where we actually take the skills that we've learned in class and apply them in real life. And in doing that, I was introduced to Dr. Sabrina, who is a therapist out here in Maryland. And she is a Black Muslim woman therapist as well. So she kind of allowed me the opportunity to create my own groups, which I was very thankful and appreciative of because my passion is working with the Black community. So again, I started a group for Black women entitled Black Blossoms. And then I started another group where I opened it up to Black men as well, because in my experience, again, it was stated earlier that my first experience with mental illness was from my brother, who was diagnosed with a very severe mental health disorder. And it was very challenging, even though I was young, I'm 6 years younger than him. It was very challenging because as I saw what he was going through and I saw the psychosis at times, I had people who would tell me that there was nothing wrong with him. People who weren't around him 24/7 telling me that there was nothing wrong, he's fine, I don't know what everyone's complaining about, and being very dismissive. And it was hurtful because for me, I was there, I lived with him. I was able to see it. And, when you're in psychosis, you can go in and out of psychosis. You can pull yourself together for a few to have a conversation. And my brother was able to do that. And so people thought that there was nothing wrong. But I'm also thankful that I had parents who were not dismissive. Maybe initially they weren't really sure what was going on and, didn't really know how to handle it, because I feel a lot of times you don't know how to handle it. This isn't something that's taught in school. We have a health class, but there's no mental health class. So when you're experiencing these new symptoms and you as the individual don't know what's going on with you, that can make you feel like you're quote unquote crazy. That can make others around you feel like you're quote unquote crazy. But again, I had parents who were open and they learned, and we went to the Mental Health Association of New Jersey, and that was my first experience where I went to a support group for the family members of those who had a individual with a mental illness. And everyone in that group, every single person in that group was also on medication just for dealing with their family member, because it can be extremely stressful. And I want to actually back up a little bit. Jared took a lot of what I wanted to talk about because my focus is trauma. I don't necessarily do intergenerational trauma. Of course, it comes up, but I do my focus is trauma, dealing with trauma, because again, you pretty much can't be Black in America without experiencing some form of trauma. So that has been my background in doing that. I have found that it's, of course, a challenge to talk about something that you can't see. You know, if you have no experience with it, you may feel like it's not real, and you may be completely dismissive of it. And that can become a challenge when trying to break the stigma. So that was always my goal and my passion. I had friends who were going through things, and, you know, their parents were, you know, completely dismissive. There's nothing wrong with you. Keep it going. And they were really struggling. And then the friends of those individuals didn't know what to do, because, again, this isn't something that's taught. So out of that came what I did back in October, which was the Black Mental Health Forum, just educating the community on Black mental health. It was originally supposed to be held in May in my hometown of Roselle, New Jersey, but due to the pandemic, we decided to hold it on October 10th, which is World Mental Health Day. And we had it in a virtual format. Jared was also one of the panelists there. And that has always been my goal since dealing with my brother, just to educate people, because sometimes I would get frustrated, but then I had to realize we don't know. You know, you can't be mad at someone for what they don't know. And so that is where a lot of my passion has come from. In dealing with the Black women that I work with, some of what Sister Essence touched on, it holds extremely true. You know, I created the group, a safe space for Black women to not have to be the superwoman, you know, because we are mothers and wives, and we have this title and that title, and it can be a challenge to take the time for yourself. And so that group was created to give people a space to kind of let go of all those titles and just be really, and try to find some healing in that. So a lot of what I wanted to touch on, again, Jared had kind of already touched on, but I did want to hopefully speak to any young people who may be listening, or actually it really doesn't matter your age, but if anyone is struggling at all in any way, shape, or form, I want you to just know that it's okay to seek out help. You know, a lot of times people feel ashamed, and there was that guilt and shame that again, Essence was talking about, and it can be a challenge. But now you have all these celebrities coming out and discussing mental health. You have Taraji P. Henson talking about her father's struggles. You have Charlemagne the God talking about his struggles. You have Dak Prescott talking about his struggles. And so now it's allowing the youth in particular to feel a little bit more comfortable about discussing some of their problems. And again, with everything that's going on in the world, it just compounds what we're already dealing with. And so I've had, you know, people come to me and say, oh, I go to therapy, but I don't tell people I'm going to therapy. I tell them I'm going to a meeting, you know, because there's that sense of shame there. And so that is really what has been my goal and my passion. And though I don't work with the youth specifically, most of the clients that I see are young adults or adults, but we do have to kind of start early with addressing this topic, because the suicide rates for Black children in particular are astounding. There was a study done in 2018, as a matter of fact, where suicide was the second cause of death among Black children ages 10 to 14, and the third leading cause of death in Black children ages, I believe it was 15 to 19. And then children 12 and under were twice as more likely to try to commit suicide than their white counterparts. So obviously there's something going on. And if a child can't come to their parent and say, I'm not okay, then what more is left for them to do but take their own life if they feel that it's too much and that they have no one to go to. So I encourage all the parents to please have conversations with your children, because you never know what they're going through. Again, a lot of times we can be very dismissive. Oh, our ancestors went through so much, you'll be fine. And that's true. Our ancestors went through a lot. But if you don't allow the children a chance to speak about what's on their heart and what's on their minds, it can become detrimental. There was also a study done where it was proven that women were more likely to attempt suicide, but males were more likely to be successful because they use more lethal means. So again, there's obviously a problem going on. And so whether you use therapy, whether you use Dianetics, whether you use something else that you feel works for you, it's okay to get help. And so that's what I was hoping to leave everyone with. And then the last part, I hope it's the last part, I kind of just started making notes as Jared took some of what I was going to say. But the last part, you know, Jared touched on the idea of having believing that you can just pray it away. And that's something else that comes up, particularly in the Black community. And, you know, in the Muslim community, we're not taught to just pray. We're taught to pray and go to work, right? So same thing with this. We can pray to Allah or to whatever God you pray to, but also do the inner healing work to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. You know, we have Brother DeAndre, you started off with the refuge prayer, right? And the first sentence is, I seek refuge from anxiety and grief. So obviously, this is something that we are suffering from, particularly as Black people. And so we can't just dismiss it as something that's not real because you can't see it. And I think that we should also just be careful because, you know, we may not see it or feel it now, but who knows what could happen tomorrow where you wake up and you're having a full-blown panic attack, or you wake up and you're not in your right state of mind and you're experiencing psychosis. Then it's like, okay, now I feel that it's real. So before it even gets to that point, we have to do the work so that our children aren't committing suicide at such young ages. We have to break the stigma. We have to have the conversations that we're not having. And so I'm not sure if there's enough time, and it's okay if we don't. It was just a video. It was a spoken word video of a Black male explaining his experience with depression. It was a short clip. But again, if there's not enough time, that's fine. But I do want to encourage everyone to just have the conversation, start somewhere. And it's okay to say that I'm not okay. So thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to Brother DeAndre and the rest of the staff at Muhammad Study Group in Charleston. And I appreciate you all. And okay, I guess they're gonna play the video. So hopefully
Please play the video.
Depression is a strange friend. Can sometimes feel like your only companion. It's the dog you try to put in the backyard when company comes over. Depression is LeBron James' hairline. It leaves and it comes back and it leaves and somehow comes back. Depression is a police officer's gun. It doesn't always need a good reason to trigger. Sometimes it just triggers, even in your own home. Depression is a Beyonce album. We don't know when it's gonna come, but we anticipate all the pandemonium it streams. Depression is a Beyonce concert. All the voices around you can be deafening. It is being around all your favorite people, doing all your favorite things, and still finding life to be despairing. It is gray paint on rainbows. Depression is waking up stuck in your bed that feels a lot more like casket, hoping to find God in the ceilings. Depression is the creepy man catcalling at her in the alley. It shouldn't be normal, but it is. Pastor, do not be offended if I go see a professional. It doesn't mean I don't think you can do your job. It just means I think she can do her job too. Like, we think professional help is cool for diabetes and pills for high blood pressure, but mental illness can only be treated with exorcism. Depression is repeating to yourself, I want to live, I want to live, I want to live, and hoping you'll believe yourself on the 12th time. On Thursday, I dragged me and all my voices into my therapist's office. I told her I don't think I'm suicidal. I just don't want to live anymore. Breathing can become so redundant after a while. My 21st birthday fell on a Sunday. I sat under voices of a choir floating over me like stars. I was a vast emptiness, surprised I was still living. I always knew I would die young. I heard of suicides in the news, and I wanted to be sad for them. But I was jealous. Maybe they wanted it more than I did. The day Kate Spade hung herself, for a moment, I thought she was a hero, a damsel in distress that came to her own rescue. People thought she gave up on life, but on Thursday, I thought she was a renegade, a rogue soldier that finally protested all the ghosts screaming at her at night. I saw a magician. The way she made the black disappear, transformed her thoughts into doves. I saw a designer. The way she made her mind all pretty and calm again. Interior decorated the room with her swinging body as the centerpiece. Maybe in that moment, she never felt more in control of her life. In her life, depression is to be space, to be so grand but still so empty and dark, to be island, surrounded all of ocean and still thirst to be privileged, affording the luxury to think about your depression, to be distant, to feel like God's afterthought, to feel broken and pierced, suspended above a hill alone. Depression sounds a lot like Jesus. I know it sounds negligent to speak of him this way. It's always sounded blasphemous to those who wanted him to be so God but not so human. Depression is being betrayed by friends, questioned by family, mocked and beaten by enemies. It is showing up last to Lazarus' deathbed, seeing his sisters mourn. It is being so aware of how grim life really is that you sweat blood. It is being in your father's counseling office in Gethsemane's garden, only to be left naked and forsaken on wooden sticks, the true vine crushed and destined out to dry on a cross and ferment in a grave. You think you didn't know what it was like to be depressed? To be stricken with grief? A man quite fond of sorrows learned his obedience through suffering, became a curse like depression on a cross for us. Sometimes telling us just to be happy is a mocking dismissal. But our Savior friend, he listens, he weeps, and he says, I know what it is like to be sorrowed unto death and still fight for joy. We do not have a Redeemer unable to sympathize with our temptations, but one who was tempted in every way, yet without falling, yet without losing grip of you. You are not alone in the spaces of your darkness. When your bed feels a lot more like casket, there is still hope to resurrect to new mercies at morning. For all the confused, God is certain. For all the unstable in mind, Christ is steadfast. And one day we will laugh about sorrow and death like it was an old inside joke among friends. Because depression may have my mind sometimes, but it is too weak to carry my soul. Despondency will never know eternity. Death will never know my spirit. Depression is now, y'all. It is not forever.
Thank you for playing that. I hope you all enjoyed it. It was just something that spoke to me, it moved me, and it gave me a little bit of insight of what it can be like. So I hope that everyone got something from it. And thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to speak.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Sister Nafisa, for the excellent presentation in the video as well. You know, as it highlights, you know, the severity of depression, but at the end, the young brother speaking, you know, gives the way out. You know, and we greatly appreciate your presentation as well. And you know that video. So what you can see, brothers and sisters, you know, is a wealth of information here from different perspectives as far as what our panelists are providing. And what we would like to do is connect our panelists now to the questions that we have, or just, you know, for respect purposes, I'll just have everyone remain anonymous, and I'll just ask the question from the panelists. The first question, it says, Assalamu alaikum for Sister Nafisa. What is mind and body skills? And is there empirical research done on Black folks? So the first question is to Sister Nafisa.
Yes, so mind-body medicine is a evidence-based practice used to treat trauma. It focuses on the connection between the mind, body, and spirit. And so there's a lot of meditation and mindfulness that is used. We also do various activities to try to help people kind of connect into their inner wisdom to help heal themselves. So originally, this is a program that is housed out in DC. So I did have to go through extensive training to be able to run these types of groups. It's not officially therapy on its own. It's a mind body, it's a skills group. So it's there for support and for teaching you skills on how to manage, some of the stress that you may be dealing with. But again, because I'm under a licensed therapist, we have kind of taken it into the therapy setting as well. It's been used in various places that have suffered from genocide and mass shootings, it's been used in Haiti to Gaza to Israel. And so that is what I have been using in my practice. Was that the only question? I'm sorry. The second part was about Black people specifically. So again, it has been used with Black people. My supervisor is actually leading a Black version of it. So the Black mind body medicine. She is collaborating with others because oftentimes we know that the therapies or modalities that we're taught oftentimes come from a Eurocentric standpoint. And so she is taking it and molding it now and even training me in it to work specifically with Black people and people of color.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you for the questions that that you're providing on the question and answers line. Thank you so much, Sister Nafisa, for your answer. The next question is to the general panel. It says, Assalamu alaikum. To the panel, I suffer from major depressive disorder. My question is, how do you suggest I deal further with it when family, etc., keep saying that there's nothing wrong with me, just pray about it, etc.? Who would like to be the first to address that? Any of the panelists, feel free to address that question. We'd like to hear everybody's perspective.
Assalamu
I
alaikum.
was. You want to go ahead, Sister Lydia?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sister Essen. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because I know I touched on it a little bit, it is common for us to hear the pray about it or nothing is wrong. And so I don't know if this person is connected to therapy or not. But of course, that is one thing that I would strongly suggest, getting connected to somebody that can provide you with the proper tools, give you the space and opportunity to feel supported. And one thing about therapy, we do try to incorporate the family at the patient's need, at the client's need. And so if you want that family education piece so that your family is able to understand some of the experiences that you're having, that's important to have there too. And there's a lot of support groups out there just for family members, because I think Sister Nafisa said it earlier, support groups, particularly for people who have family members that are experiencing mental health issues. But I would definitely say starting out with therapy, being connected to certain support groups that have these same experiences. So there are depression groups. A very common thing when we hear about Alcohol Anonymous, there's also an Emotions Anonymous, which a lot of people like to go to because it doesn't have a commitment there. You could just walk right in and see other people that have those same experiences and walk out. So it's not necessarily something that you have to commit to like you do in therapy, but I would definitely say starting with the therapy is a big thing.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sister Lydia.
All praises due to Allah. Are you able to hear me now?
Nice and clear.
Praise be to Allah. We've been praying for the last hour, Brother DeAndre. I would just like to be able to take this time, because I didn't get a chance earlier, Brother DeAndre, to be able to not only answer the question, but this should be able to put a little light on what we been talking about all along with Dianetics dealing with the pandemic. There's an article that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan wrote, and it's entitled Unity, Key to Success, and it's in the Final Call newspaper 2 editions ago on page 20. I'd like to be able just to take time to read that, and I can maybe, hopefully that will answer the question. These are 3 tests that Allah God has given to each of us as proof of our worthiness to face and overcome all struggles of life. Number 1, a hostile environment. Number 2, overcoming overwhelming odds. And number 3, pulling up against the force of gravity. No person or people become great having an easy time. Most of us, or most of you, think that if Allah God loves you, you are supposed to have a life on a silver platter. Allah God life does not work that way. We must get away from that old ignorant way of thinking. Allah God has ordained struggle for all living things. I'm going to say that again, that Allah God ordained struggle for all living things. Man has struggled to conquer the hostile environment of the jungle, and he has. Man has struggled to conquer the hostile environment of the desert, and he has. Man has struggled to conquer the oceans and the depth of struggle to conquer the mountains, and he has. Man has struggled to conquer the hostile environment of space. Nothing remains in the path of man who is resolved or determined to succeed. If we conquer the most hostile environment of life before we had a developed intelligence, what should we be able to do now that we are developing a higher degree of intelligence? We have to think about that for a minute. Allah has blessed us to overcome this, device right here for the last couple of, the last hour. So you have to have patience with yourself. You got to know that Allah is with you. You got to know that he is going to give you struggle in life. And I heard Mother Tanetta even talked about that earlier in terms when I was reading one of her articles, that the struggle from within, you see, and if we don't go through that struggle, how are we going to get better in life? So the pain that we're having, we're going to have a little pain. It's okay to have that kind of pain, but you gotta be able to believe in Allah. You got to be able to believe in God, that he's with you. So if we can do all of that with very little development, just imagine now. And if you don't have that particular article, please go to your Final Call newspaper and read that again. But I want to be able to continue on, Brother DeAndre, if I may. And this is something that Mother Tanetta had told us. I've been studying Mother Tanetta for many years. And I just want to be able to say, and those of you who don't know who Mother Tanetta is, she is the wife of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. All praises due to Allah. She has said to us that our babies, we can be actually reading our book. She had actually the Supreme Wisdom. That's what she had in her hand when she did the video. And as adults, she said that we can be looking over in the problem book and be struggling with these questions. And our babies will come up and say, oh, Mommy and Daddy, you want to know the answer to that? Oh, this is the answer. And it's such a blessing because our babies today, if you know it or not, they are the generation of the Messiah. That's what she said. They are the generation of the Messiah. Can you imagine that? And also that they have come into this world as soldiers. They are more conscious and more knowledgeable of the negative side of us and the generation before us, because we've been going through a lot of negativeness in our lives, and we'll get to that in maybe in a little while. But we are now reaping the consequences of all the negative behavior we've been having. So this is what's going to happen. She told us to look on the brighter side And she said that our babies are prepared to go into the depth of hell, and to be pulled out of hell, and they are fully prepared to battle the Satan that is on the earth. Now, if we just think about that for a moment, and then also I would like to be able to end that in our supreme wisdom, we are told that our thoughts travel 24 billion miles per second. Can you imagine? That's pretty fast. I mean, if Allah has our mind traveling 24 billion miles a second, and he wants to, and he puts, put to us a question: how many times how many trips can our mind travel to the far planet Pluto? Now, if he gave us that question, now surely we can overcome these little engrams that we have, I won't say weeping over, but yes, we are definitely have the power, and we have the strength to overcome all obstacles in our way, and that including engrams. And if those of you don't know what the engram is, because our presentation was a little choppy earlier, it's just a photograph of all the negativity that has happened to us. And you can get an engram by two different ways. You can get an engram, which is a painful emotion, or a physical pain. So you got physical pain and you got physical emotion. So in other words, the painful emotion, thank you, honey. The painful emotion, if you fall and scrape your leg or maybe break an arm, that's physical. You get an engram. You can also get an engram if you have loss of a loved one. Okay, that's more emotional. But either way, it is now bedded into your reactive mind, and it's still there until someone by an auditor, or maybe someone that can actually get you to sit down and discuss those particular problems that you have. So in Dianetics, we use language like the reactive mind. We use words like your analytical mind. Your analytical mind is on board right now. So I just want to be able to say that to everyone, because we know that there's a mighty God, and he ain't going to leave us. He's not going to leave us. If you hold on to him, he's going to hold on to you, and you're going to get through all of this here and the pandemic right along with it by his grace. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, Sister Lydia. Thank you. Thank you so much for that inspiration and information to know that we have the power within, the God within, to overcome all obstacles in our path. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Brother Jared, your perspective, sir.
I'm sorry, I was reading all the questions in the Q&A.
Okay, I'll reread the question again. It says, to the panel, I suffer from a major depressive disorder. My question is, how do you suggest I deal further with it when family, etc., keep saying that there's nothing wrong with me? Just pray about it, etc.
Gotcha. Okay. I would definitely have to echo with what Sister Essence said. You know, there's EA groups out there, or emotional anonymous groups out there. I also, you know, believe that she can, that this individual can bring their family into a therapy session with them. Also providing, resources to the family, describing what major depressive disorder is, what are the symptoms, what are the treatment modalities for it, and things of that nature as well. I think all that could be helpful. I don't want to say it can be the answer, but it can be helpful. You know, if the family isn't, willing to believe or accept that this is the diagnosis, then, we can try everything that we can, but if they're not willing to accept, then there's really nothing that we can do, but we can attempt by the ways that I just suggested prior.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for that information, Brother Jared. Thank you very much. Nafisa, would you like to share some information on that?
Everyone has kind of touched on it. I'm not sure if it was said specifically, but in addition to having your family members go into support groups, just finding a support system for yourself. Because if you can do the psychoeducation and everything like that, but if your family still isn't really understanding all that's going on with you, you definitely want to be with some like-minded individuals who do understand. So finding that support system, that support group, so that you don't feel alone, thus worsening the depression. That's all.
Thank you very much, Sister Nafisa. Appreciate that. Next question is kind of similar, but they ask, Assalamu alaikum, can you have each of the panelists state their therapeutic counseling approaches? So the question is asking your particular therapeutic counseling approach in terms of dealing with this issue. So I guess we can start off with, start back up with Sister Essence and go the same way. Sister Essence, Sister Lydia, Brother Jarrett, and Sister Nafisa.
I use a common therapeutic approach, which is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as strength-based. That's actually my favorite, is strength-based, because that really hones in on what your individual strengths are and how we can use that in order to help you get better. And so a lot of times when we think about mental health, a lot of people are not at a point where they can identify those strengths. So using that perspective is definitely beneficial, because not only are you able to identify your strengths, but you're able to utilize them on your own and in therapy process in order for you to start to work through some of the things that you may be experiencing. And I also talked about just a little bit the Afrocentric perspective, which is not necessarily a therapeutic approach, but it's a perspective to keep in mind when we're working with people of color in particular, because it's identified for our community in particular, and not from a Eurocentric perspective, which a lot of therapy base is from that, because we live in the United States. So.
Thank you, Sister Essence. Sister Lydia.
All praises are due to Allah. Yes, when we have those type of problems in Dianetics, we have tools that we use, and those tools are very simple, and we can even teach the individual, via Zoom. This particular tool is called Locational Processing Assist. And locational process assist is just taking those individuals that is having issues or these engrams that is present, and taking them to a location and allow them to be able to connect back to the environment which they are detached themselves from. That's a simple way of doing it. It's very simple. It takes maybe about a good hour to learn, and you can use it on your children, especially the young ones. The little ones, with this pandemic and everybody locked down, trust and believe, outside everybody, come on, let's go, And when you take them outside, you connected them to the trees, to the grass. You allow them to be able to be free of these problems that they're having. And it's usually just, mommy, I want this, or daddy, I want that. Okay. But it goes a little deeper than that when it comes to adults, but we'll have more time maybe to talk about that later on. There's another tool that we also use, is called Touch Assist. And Touch Assist, again, with this pandemic, we're not able to do that. But it's about dealing with types of injuries, whether it's emotional or physical of your body. And Touch Assist is just allowing the pre-clear, which is the person that has the engram, and allowing themselves to be, they're fully clothed, but they're sitting in the seat, and they're allowing the auditor, which is the one that is auditing them, to touch certain parts of their bodies to be able to get to that engram that is, again, troubling them. We have Contact Assist. There's another assist that is called How to Make a Person Sober. Usually this is used good, especially with the brothers out, with the final call and coming across someone that has problems, maybe dealing with drugs or alcohol, Again, this process is very good for them to use. It's another process we can teach those who are interested in that. And the last one is called Walk, Walk, Walk. And that one is also another awesome tool that we use, and we teach those individuals that will help them with their needs as well. Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar. Thank you, Sister Lydia. And I didn't mean to leave you out, Brother Joseph.
Well, yes, I would like to address that, but I'm going to address it as a person who personally suffered from depression for a number of years before I came into the Nation of Islam. And it is very debilitating. It is, even among my friends who may have seen me act jovial or something at times, but yet and still they didn't know what was going on inside of me. One of the things that I was blessed to discover is fasting. In our book, How to Eat to Live by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he teaches fasting. He said fasting is a cure for 90% of our ills. And my wife is holding up the book right here, How to Eat to Live, book 1 and 2. Now, what's key is we all understand, all the panelists here will probably bear me witness that stress is the #1 killer of Black people. We suffer disproportionately from stresses that other groups in this country and around the world do not necessarily have to go through. So how is stress itself the killer? Well, when you stress, you have excess stress, you're dealing with it by overeating. You have comfort foods, so now you gain weight. You gain weight, so now you have health problems physically. You end up dying or suffering from the illness of eating improperly, eating the wrong foods. And what will happen then? When you have these health problems, now you feel a guilt. You feel a guilt for the health problems, or for overeating, or for gaining too much weight. Okay, you may be a drinking person. You like to drink alcohol. It alleviates the stress temporarily, but not permanently. So you get into a binge. You're gonna self-medicate by drinking or by drugs, and you're in a vicious cycle, and you cannot find your way out of it. Sex is another one. Sex, just because you're going to feel good, you're going to feel good for the time being, but you're still going to face the same problems when you're finished. So we get into that same cycle. But, having worked in the emergency room for the last 10 years before I retired, we dealt with people who were called 5150s. This is a legal term, medical term, that means that a person is either suicidal or homicidal. He's either going to hurt himself, maybe suicide, or he's going to hurt somebody else, maybe kill them, homicide. When they come to the emergency room, they're given drugs that calm them down, maybe even put them to sleep. Haldol, Ativan, these are the names of the drugs they're given. And they're prescribed these drugs upon release from the hospital. What do? They go out and they find that these drugs, they sedate them too much. They get sluggish. They don't want to take the drugs. They stop taking the drugs. They may even sell the drugs because they have street value. And they end up back in the emergency room. Well, there you go. Just like if you're overeating, over drinking, sex for no reason, you're just in a vicious cycle. The medical profession in the hospital is doing the same thing as you're doing, which is keeping you in a vicious cycle, but never actually curing the problem. Big money for them, we understand that, but yet and still, you're just caught up in a cycle that is really causing you not only more stress, but more guilt. And I say guilt because a lot of times, as with myself, guilt will cause you to feel depressed in and of itself because you know you're better than this. You know your life should be better than this, and yet it is not. So you have the stress releases that you're using, and you have the guilt associated with it, and now you have depression. So how can we break the cycle is what we're trying to deal with in this panel discussion. Well, in Dianetics, we have tools that we use that does very much work. A Dianetics auditor is just a skilled listener, able to put you in a light sense of concentration. And in that light state of concentration, can walk you back down to the actual times and moments that caused at the root those problems to occur that you are trying to self-medicate or relieve in any other way you can. Well, it works. And those who came back from theaters of war recently, Afghanistan, Iraq, what happens? We all know, and we've read plenty of times where they are killing themselves. They're committing suicide at alarming rates. And the military was, at its wit's end. And how can they deal with these soldiers coming back from theaters of war with all of these traumas, all these stresses, and they survived over there, but they get back home and they're killing themselves. So what they found, the military, is that the best way to handle this, and they have been successful at lowering the number of the rate of suicide with those military members coming back from theaters of war, is that which they won't call Dianetics for political and maybe monetary reasons, but the same exact techniques that we use in Dianetics works on those people who came back with post-traumatic stress syndrome. So as the panelists before me have already stated, we as Black people, we suffer from stresses, post-traumatic stress more than anybody. It's not even what is current, which is awesome, overwhelming, overpowering. But our stresses are intergenerational, as Brother Jared mentioned. That means we inherit stress. We are born into this world already stressed out, learning to cope with things that we don't even understand yet. This is the awesome task of the panelists here with their different avenues and ways of dealing with it. But whatever works, works. And I have to say and urge our people listening and tuning in, do not feel that there is some stigma that you need to overcome. You almost cannot be born a Black man and woman in America and not have these stresses, not have what we call in Dianetics engrams. It's almost impossible to be that way, but it is not impossible to clear yourself of these stresses and become healthy. Even in the midst of what's going on the earth today, we have tools given to us. All praises due to our God that He's done that. And we want to urge all listeners to take advantage of these things. When the discussion is even ended, continue to reach out so that we, whichever of the panelists you felt might be of a help to you, reach out so that we might be able to at least steer you, if not personally help you, to overcome these stresses. We are all that we have. All we have is God and each other. But all we ever needed was God and each other. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say about that.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. With that, I greatly appreciate that. With that being said, brothers and sisters, the program the duration was from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. And I just received notification. I wanted us to go an extra 30 minutes to accommodate everyone with their provide opportunity with the panel for the panelists to address the questions, as well as everyone who has questions in the question and answer box to get their question addressed. But unfortunately, the Zoom method that we're using is not allowing him to edit the time to give us an additional 30 minutes. So we're going to have to close out in 11 minutes, unfortunately, because we do have some questions that's in the chat box that's very, very important. So with the, any other panelists had an additional question or answer to the question in terms of therapeutic approach and counseling approach?
Yeah, I practice from the therapeutic approach called CBT, as well as Sister Essence, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. Focuses on how thoughts influence feelings, and feelings influence behaviors, and behaviors just reinforce that thought, pretty much, as well as solution focused.
Thank you, Brother Jared. Sister Nafisa.
And again, as stated earlier, I use mind-body medicine. I also use person-centered, and when appropriate, CBT. I know that was one of the questions for me about if I've ever heard of CBT. Yes, I do use it when appropriate. And that, everyone's different. So I would just say kind of, you have to know yourself and then search around for a therapist that you think would be a good fit for you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sister Nafisa. As we're talking, we're trying to extend this time because I'm looking at the Q&A box, and there's very important questions there. So I'll keep everyone posted in terms of the if the time can get extended. I'm hoping that we can. But if not, we can put a cap on the questions in the Q&A box, and we'll go into the next question. It was personally to Brother Jared, said, what assessment tool are you using? I think you kind of answered. Do you use ACE, or what is your therapeutic approach? Do I hear my grandmother's hands?
So assessment tools right now, pretty much just doing by, psychosocials. I have heard of ACEs. I do not use it. And already said this, the therapeutic approach. And actually, this brother, we connected offline, and we were talking about that, My Grandmother's Hands is a book. So I didn't hear of it until he mentioned it, and I'm probably going to purchase it. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next question is from another person in the Q&A box. It says, I am curious if any of the panelists are seeing an increase in mental health concerns following exposure to the coronavirus.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And before you answer that,
Yes.
Brother Benjamin, please keep me informed of as far as the time, because these are very important. Now, I hope we can extend this Zoom time to address these questions. So, let's get someone to address that.
I think we all kind of said yes, definitely. For
Yes.
sure. It's been a huge increase.
Yep, definitely. A lot of people, struggling with whether it's grief, death of loved ones, due to the coronavirus, being, quarantining, by themselves, feeling lonely, just a plethora of, different, reasons, but definitely there's been an increase since the pandemic.
And then also with the increase of unemployment, that has played a tremendous part in us becoming depressed, losing your job, not being able to pay your bills. That is part of this whole depression and how we need to deal with it.
Thank you. Sister Essence, would you like to share anything?
I was just going to piggyback off of everybody else, but there's a huge increase. Anxiety in particular is a common thing that I've been seeing for a lot of people. Anxiety, particularly around catching the coronavirus or other people around them catching it, which is, I think a lot of people have a hard time sometimes diagnosing anxiety. So it's been a common thing that has increased since the coronavirus.
Thank you once again. Let me check with the tech people. Could you give me a notification of whether or not we can extend that? If not, I have to, because we have 6 minutes and I don't want the Zoom program to end abruptly. Please, Brother Benjamin, if you can let me know, we can extend the time for about 30, let's say about 36 more minutes. Okay, well, if we can ask the panelists, if we can be, for the sake of that, if we can be very brief, we can entertain one more question. And if we can be as brief as we possibly can for the sake of this time. The question is, Assalamu alaikum. I've been exposed to various therapies and counsel, unlike many Blacks were not growing up. Today, therapy seems to be the new blanket answer to Black people. When I hear therapists talk about them and their practices and experiences and profession, et cetera, therapy now looks like diagnosis and new terms to Black issues. Anyone like to address that?
Yeah, I'll address that. So briefly, I don't really think that therapy is the new blanket answer. I think there's, like I mentioned before, there's a history of resistance to mental health or therapy for Black people. So now what you're seeing is a big push for Black people to go to therapy, and just because you go to therapy doesn't mean that you have a diagnosis, or a diagnosis. So I don't think that diagnosis covers up Black issues or become new terms in relation to Black issues. These Black issues always existed, and I think that therapy is a way to help us cope, help us engage with our emotions, and all of that. So just wanted to be brief. So yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Just received that we're going to try to keep it going to see what happens. So if anyone else can address that, please feel free.
I would also just add that a lot of times when we have experienced a bad therapist, it can kind of put a bad taste in our mouths about therapy in general. So I would encourage everyone, the same way you shop around for the best doctor in your area, shop around for the best therapist in your area. Not every therapist is for everyone. We all have different styles, different approaches, and different ways of working. So you really want to find someone that is a good fit for you.
Thank you. Sister Essence.
I actually, can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I actually agree with what Brother Jared was saying, and just it's very new to the Black community in general. So I think because it is new, it's becoming very common to hear a lot of these different things, and so I don't necessarily think that it's a new blanket. And the same thing as Sister Nafisa was saying, finding different therapists that fits you, because that's important. Sometimes you might get the wrong therapist that doesn't necessarily understand or isn't able to provide you the things that you're looking for. So just to keep it brief.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And what I'm going to do, brothers and sisters, for the sake of time, Brother Benjamin, if we can, well, because I'm hoping this end on us with this good information, but we did speak when we met with the panelists a couple of days ago that we're going to have to do a part 2 of this, because we anticipated that we weren't going to get enough time to get the information as well as accommodate the questions from the Q&A. So we do have a financial literacy session in February, and we'll speak to the team to see if we want to pick up the discussion on mental health again in March and do a part 2, since we're not able to get to everyone's question. So ending this, we would like to ask everyone just to give your contact information, how people can access you in terms of getting the services that you provide at this moment. In any business. Yes, sir.
You can find me on Instagram, j.washington. j.hope. You can also visit my website, is jwhopeservices.com. And hope is spelled Hope, just in case it sounds weird with me saying it. So, yep.
Okay.
If you'd like to be able to get in contact with Brother Joseph or myself, Sister Lydia, our email is muhjose12, that's the number 12, at gmail.com. So please get in contact with us and we'll give you more information about Dianetics. Thank you.
I would like to say, Brother DeAndre, that what works, works. So do seek help and see if something works for you. And Dianetics is certainly one that has been found to be successful. But one thing we do know will not be successful is to do nothing. And we hope that you will not make that choice and just seek help. We can end this stigma about stress and seeking therapy in our community. It's time.
Thank you. Sister Nafisa?
You can email me at nafisa@theheartnest.com, NAFISAH, at theheartnest, THEHEARTNEST.com.
Thank you. Essence?
Yes, you can visit my website at Her Healing Services. So that's just herhealingservices.com, and email me at essence@herhealingservices.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I didn't want to end abruptly. Brother Benjamin did say, I'm checking with the tech team. It says that it's still going on. So I'm wondering if we can squeeze in a couple of questions, that you can address since it's still going on. And I'm hoping that it can give us an additional 30 minutes. And then what we'll do, we'll cap it off, end it off. And then, of course, again, we'll have to do a part 2 of this, preferably in March, but we'll discuss it and get back with you all. We don't want to change the panelists. We want to have the Power Pack panelists once again, because it's a wealth of information, as well as therapies, as well as solutions to the problems that we're hearing. So I'm going to try to squeeze a question or 2 in, and then we'll end after 2 more questions, do some announcements, and then prepare for the next time. Okay. Make sure I got the right question. It says, really, I'm hearing distinct instructions for people. What are we instructing individuals to do within their reaches?
I'll take that. I think that was like a 2-part question. I think this was related to the question prior. So in terms of what are we doing, distinct instructions for people, I mean, I give distinct instructions to my clients, or actually, let me not say that. I'm gonna be very particular about my language. I assist my clients in finding ways in which they can heal, right? I also assist clients in finding instructions that's in their reach, right? But in terms of like being on a panel, in terms of seeing somebody on the street and having a conversation like that, or in terms of just meeting somebody outside of that therapy room, I'm not going to say you can't give them instruction, but there has to be there's ethical guidelines that we have to follow, 1, and 2, there's a bunch of information as a therapist that I would need in order to fully give you the best that I can give you out of myself. I can't know just bits and pieces of a story or have bits and pieces of a puzzle and try to put the whole thing together. I would need the whole puzzle. So I think to answer that question, it's really difficult to give distinct instructions to individuals without all the pieces to the puzzle. But as therapists, as mental health providers, we try our best. So
I do want to piggyback off of that a little bit too, because I didn't mention this earlier, but there's a therapeutic approach that's called solutions focus, which for a lot of people, depending on what type of therapy you're seeking, that could be beneficial when you think about looking for instructions. One thing I'm very big on when it comes to my clients is giving them homework. So that way, you know, you have something to work on in between those sessions and you don't feel like you're not necessarily working on what we may have discussed in therapy that particular session. So, but I agree with Brother Jared when he said that it's very hard to give distinct instructions if it's not your actual client and you don't know all of the information or history about the client before you provide any kind of extra tools or assignments to give them.
Thank you, Sister Essence. Anyone else?
I was actually going to say pretty much what's already been said. It can be a challenge to give instructions if we don't have the history of the client to be able to fully conceptualize and determine what actions are best. But I wanted to kind of tie that into, I saw a second question that asks, what are we instructing individuals to do that can't afford therapy? And I see that that one was directed as to me. So for the sake of time, I figured I'd try to tie it in. But for people who can't afford therapy, and that's a huge one, because if you don't have insurance, it can be a challenge. But a lot of therapists do offer sliding scales. And if you go to, for example, psychologytoday.com or cliniciansofcolor.org, you can kind of shop around to see which therapist you think would be the best fit for you, and then see if they offer a sliding scale where they'll reduce the cost of sessions. Also, there's a bunch of free support groups and things of that nature that you can look for as well.
Sister Nafisa, if you don't mind, I wanted to say something to that too about the not being able to afford services. Most states have what's called a community service board in each state. And I know from a Georgia perspective and a couple of our surrounding states, it's based on the individual. So if they don't have any income, they don't have a job, they just have to show that they don't have that. And typically they can get those services for free. That's something common that we used to use when I worked out of a psych hospital, because we had a lot of homeless people that still needed to go and get connected to some type of therapy or psychiatric services. So even when I've been referring people out to different states, if you kind of just type in whatever state you're in, community service board, you can typically find one, and you're able to almost get those services completely free.
Thank you. Thank you once again for that information. I'd like to go into another question. It's relating or specifically to Sister Essence, pardon me. It says, Essence Washington, what are some of the best coping methods to deal with mental health and illness?
So I think I mentioned this earlier. It depends on the person, because every person is completely different. I will say a couple of common things that a lot of people do. We hear about journaling a lot. We hear about music, having a routine, finding a new hobby. One thing that I think is really important, and I think Brother Joseph mentioned this, that physical and health piece is a huge factor. So what you eat, what you put into your body, exercising, that all plays into how you feel. And so I always encourage people, coping skill is having a healthy diet routine, and making sure that you're doing some activity, because a lot of times that really helps and benefits you in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have 2 more questions we can get, and these questions are specifically addressed to one for Brother Jared and another for Sister Lydia. So Brother Jared, I'll start off with this one. It says, Jared, I've heard people say that they don't want to go back to therapy because all the therapist wants to do is discuss their problems. How do we get effective therapists that will give people tools, instructions for self to take home instead of only having them revisit their traumas and pain?
I think for that question, Sister Nafisa really touched on it perfectly. You got to shop around for your therapist just like you shop around for your doctor. I have clients that worked well with me, and I have some clients that prefer different therapists. It just depends on the therapist style. I'm not the type of therapist where I'm just going to only talk about your problems. We bring in multiple different things, or I bring in multiple different things. I usually start my session off with, "How you doing? How's your week? What would you like to talk about today?" So I don't necessarily say, "Okay, well, you have this problem," or "I identified that you have this problem and this is what we need to talk about." No, we're going to talk about what you identify as the problem, and I'm going to assess whether I pick up on different things within what you're saying, and based off of your history, based off of all the information that I've gathered through talking with you. So in terms of the question, where how do we get therapists to be effective in that area, it just depends on that therapist style. It really does. And you just got to shop. You got to shop around and shop around and shop around until you get the therapist that you feel like you can connect with. Because one of the biggest things of therapy, or one of the things that makes therapy work, is rapport. That is number one thing for therapy to work, is building that rapport and having a good rapport with your therapist, and vice versa, therapist with the client. So.
Thank you, Brother Jack. There was two questions before we get to Sister Lydia. I can answer real quickly. One question asked, do we have this on YouTube? We tried YouTube, but we wasn't able to do it, but we are going, I believe, Facebook Live. But if we can, we'll find a way to take this program and upload it on YouTube if we can. But we did try the YouTube Live, but it didn't work out. And as well as the continuing the chat, will be another one. We'll be discussing another part 2 of Black mental health for March. Next month, we'll have a financial literacy program that we'll be doing. And March, God willing, we'll look forward to having a part 2 on Black mental health.
Praise be to Allah.
Okay. All right. For Sister Lydia, it states, in fact, there's another question for Sister Nafisa. Sister Lydia, when dealing with youth and non-believers, the faith is not as strong as ours. How would you convince someone who feels the Creator is to blame for their problem?
Can you repeat that for me, brother?
Yes, ma'am. It says, when dealing with youth and non-believers, the faith is not as strong as ours. How would you convince someone who feels the Creator is to blame for their problem?
Well, the Creator is not to blame for our problems. And also dealing with the youth, as a teacher and as an educator, when we look at our children, like I just mentioned that article with Mother Tanetta that talks about the creativity of our babies. And if we take our children, like Mother Tanetta was saying at one time, that if we actually, when our babies are born into this world, because they have the mind of God, we have to be able to cultivate them and not stifle their creativity. And if you're a good parent, and if you just need more parenting skills, we got to be able to understand that we got little gods in front of us. And we have to be able to allow them to grow. In the world, when we say kindergarten, is really a garden. But when we say in our homes, we got to be able to create an atmosphere for them and allow them to be able to come into the gods that they are in. So we as MGT, which is the Muslim community, we don't believe that God is the problem to anything other than that it's the answer to everything. So again, I'm hoping I'm answering that question well. Our babies are our future, and we got to let them grow. Was that okay?
Absolutely. Thank you. It sounds well and great to me.
Praise be to Allah.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, this is for Sister Nafisa. Here's more questions. If we can, as we get the questions answered, if we can delete the questions. Now, if there was another question that was for Sister Nafisa in particular, I don't see it.
Yes, I answered that one. It's just the
You,
essence aspect as well.
okay.
I tied it into the other question.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Sounds good. I wanted to say some questions in the chat box, or what should I say, statements in the chat box. One, this is, I must admit, as a therapist, Dianetics is an extremely useful technology for dealing with mental illness. I am grateful Dianetics was included in this discussion.
Praise be to Allah.
Yeah.
That's such a blessing, because we want to be able to also add, you know, we don't see ourselves as being therapists. In Dianetics, the terminology is an auditor, and we just listen. And if you looking for an auditor, you would have to contact us. We don't get on the phone and can call you up. And the price, guess what? It's free. It doesn't cost you 1 penny. All it costs is a phone call, asking Allah to please bless you to, you know, get in contact with an auditor. And there are hundreds of us throughout the nation. Okay, Brother Joseph and I, we're just one in this region, which is Mid-Atlantic region. We want to be able to thank you again, Brother DeAndre, and putting this on for our region and all over the nation. And all those who are listening, national and also regional, that the auditors, we are here, willing and able to help our brothers and sisters and family members to get over those engrams. But our services is definitely free of charge. The Honorable Minister Farrakhan don't want us to charge anyone, and our services is free to everyone.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Thank you. And I can attest to that.
Yes, sir.
We're going to ask everyone if you have any final or closing statements that you would like to share before we go into, you know, the closing, you know, remarks or the closing of advertisement. If you can please just give us a closing statement to wrap everything up.
Okay, I guess I'm up first again. Listen, we're in a pandemic. We don't know where it's going. If it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So what would be more commonsensical than to reach out to each other and avail ourselves to each other, so that no matter what comes our way, we still have each other. Isolation is not the solution. Isolation causes problems, and it allows you to take on more and more fear and stress and guilt and worry. And that's just the problem right there. We are not so connected. Don't hide behind social media either. On the other hand, we still have to practice social distancing. You see the dilemma? So we have to at least avail ourselves to each other. We have excellent panelists here from whichever perspective they deal with therapy, they have concern. It's not just their schooling or expertise that is here. It's their love for our people that will allow them to continue where no one else might with their expertise. We have beautiful people here that God has placed before everybody, and many more that are not on this panel. So reach out. Don't be worried about the stigma of needing help, needing mental therapy. Well, we're all we got. God and each other. That's all we have. And that's all we have ever needed was God and each other. We'll get through this. And so being a spiritual person, I'll end with this. Jesus said, when you see all these things start to occur, lift up your heads, for your deliverance is near. Well, it's hard to lift up your head in a pandemic or famine coming or whatever comes our way, unless you understand the end of that phrase. Your deliverance is near. Keep your hope alive. Keep your head up. It's going to get worse perhaps before it gets better, but we still have each other. And when it's over with, when we come through the light at the end of the tunnel, is that we'll be a much more united and a happy people. if we still hold on to the rope of Allah, God, and hold on to each other. And that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Ms. Lydia.
I was just going to say, seek refuge in Allah.
Thank you, ma'am. Absolutely. But Brother Jared.
Yeah, I would say, you know, just take care of yourself. You know, take just as well as you take care of your physical health, take care of your mental health, take care of your spiritual health. Without the mind, the body can't go. That's it.
Thank you, Brother Jared. Sister Essence.
Brother Jared took my answer. No, I'm kidding.
Uh-oh.
But I will I will say, you know, it is important to prioritize yourself. I think as Black people in general, we tend to care a lot about what's going on outside of us rather than what's going on inside of us. And so just making sure that you're feeding yourself the right things that you need to feed yourself. And what I mean by that is like the stuff that we watch, the things that we do, making sure that we're conscious of what we're putting into our mind frame in order to make sure that we're doing the best things that we can do for ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sister Essence. Sister Nafisa.
I would just invite everyone to, again, search around for the type of therapy or Dianetics or whatever therapeutic outlet that you feel is best for you. Again, everyone is different, so you really want to just do the research before you engage in any type of therapy. I would also encourage everyone to, like what was stated earlier, just try to take care of yourself, try to take care of one another. If you are feeling any symptoms at all, if you're not okay, reach out for help. We are here to support you through this. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Nafisa. And thank you all, wonderful, powerful panelists, wonderful information. We learned a lot, as well as the therapy and the solutions to deal with Black mental health. And I wanted to ask you all a question. If we can do a part 2 in March, will y'all commit? Will y'all be available in March so we can continue this on?
Yes, sir, absolutely. We want to be able to say, yes, sir, absolutely. And all those who participated that we reached out to, if they're online, we want to thank them and ask them, will they be able to come back too?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
March, yeah, you know, definitely just depending on the date. You know, March is a crazy crazy month for us with birthdays, anniversaries, and all that good stuff. So, shoot us the date, and you know, we'll try to make it work.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
And same, just let me know the date.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Essence. Oh, I guess Brother Jared already.
He said us.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you all. We just had some brief announcements. Please, I hope everyone got the contact information for everyone. If you have any additional services that you provide, businesses that you have, please feel free to announce it now. So that everybody can gain access to the services that you provide, or if you have any business that you have, you can, you know, announce that now before we go into our announcements. If not, we can move on. Okay. All right, no problem. We have something, if we can put the information on the screen as far as the sponsors and everything. We have that information. And while we do that, I would like to thank, this will not be possible for without the excellent team headed by our brother Benjamin, wife Veronica, Sister Valerie, Sister Veronica H, Sister Joella, an excellent team that had conference calls, that dialogue, that worked on this, and really, really did an excellent job in terms of putting this program on. as well as future programs that they will be putting on, or, you know, assisting in terms of putting on. We thank you so much for your work. And we thank once again all of the panelists for your expertise, insight, counsel, guidance, and the therapy and solutions that you provide. Some of the sponsors is Fessentials.com, Black-owned, eco-friendly wax, essential oils, mental health benefits, soft crackling wooden wicks, and more. That's Fessentials.com. FOIhosting.com, providing affordable, dependable, and secured web hosting services. Also, we have virtual occasions, enjoying joyous events with family and friends in a virtually safe way. These are some of the sponsors that we have for our Real Talk program. To become a sponsor, please contact our brother Benjamin Muhammad at 843-608-8585 or at brotherbenmuhammad@gmail.com. Black businesses that support our needs. So if there's anyone who has a business and would like to be a sponsor and we'll highlight your business, please contact Brother Benjamin. Also, this program helps and assists us in being that we're in a pandemic. We're not doing things as we should or as we used to do in terms of soliciting donations to keep our ongoing work here in Charleston going. So this platform also, if anyone can, helps to assist in us continuing to making our communities into a decent and safe place to live. So you can visit us as noicharlestonsc.org. Any donations you receive will continue to aid Muhammad Study Group of North Charleston in helping to make our communities a decent and safe place to live. You can go to the PayPal link of paypal.me/Muhammad Mas or Cash App at $Charleston Mas. And you can visit us on Facebook with our Facebook information that you see. We're on Muhammad's Mas of Charleston, or Muhammad's Mas of Charleston on our Facebook page. You can find us there. With that being said, again, next month, we'll have information available for our financial literacy program, and we'll have excellent panelists, once again, power pack panelists, providing good information in terms of what we can do to become financially literate as well as financially stable and strong as a people, because we know that economics is something that we have to talk about individually as well as a collective understanding that we have to have as a people so that we can build the institutions and the nations that we need to build as we move forward as a people. So thanking everyone in the listening audience, thanking everyone who registered, thanking everyone who's listening to us Facebook Live. Thank you, thank you, thank you once again to the panelists. May God bless you all. And if there's nothing else, we'd like to close this program as we open in prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praises due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Master this day of judgment in which we now live. Thee alone we worship, thine aid we seek. O Allah, guide us along the right path, the path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed favors, not the path of those upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray. Ameen. So please keep informed, keep in contact with us. We'll keep in contact with you to give you further information about the financial literacy program for next month and part 2 of Black mental health. So may God bless you all. I feel good about this. Did y'all enjoy it, panelists?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, all right, all right. Excellent job, excellent job. And I pray that everyone in our listening and viewing audience enjoy it as well. May God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your day as I greet you all in peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Wa alaikum salam.